TKO Boxing with Sherry Abassi. And today I'm once again joined by my friend, Mr. Jay Chaudhary from Canada. Jay, Assalamu alaikum, brother. How are you? You okay?
Walaikum assalam. What's going on, brother?
Oh, good, bro. Thank you. It's been a little while since we last caught up and did like a sort of chat like this. I think it was last
Yeah,
June. So quite a lot of things have happened since then. There's been a lot of big developments, obviously in the world of sport and boxing in particular.
yep.
Of course, first place to start is obviously the ever-growing influence of Saudi Arabia and especially the big push of Riyadh season and Turkey buying the Ring magazine as well was a big thing. That's obviously gone on in the world of boxing as well. Just your thoughts on maybe since June we've had a number of big events with Riyadh season. We've had the 5v5, Beterbiev Bivol 1, Fury Usyk 2, then the last crescendo, a massive card again, Joshua Dubois in the UK, the Terence Crawford card in America. So, they're getting around the world now. They're starting to do cards in places outside of Saudi Arabia as well. What have your thoughts been on the push by Saudi Arabia in the last, say, 9 months since we last spoke?
I think they're doing tremendous events. I think the productions are amazing. I think the run of shows have been incredibly amazing. I think they have quite improved their boxing events ever since they started. I mean, we went from a beginning of a 9 hour, 10 hour show to now between 4 and 5 hours, I believe. And I think that's due to the fact that they've been hiring the right personnel. My understanding is that they have hired outsourced their event coordinators, their event producers, and they got in some pretty heavy hitters. These are the same people who produce the Oscars. These are the same people that produce red carpet gala events. So they pretty much know what they're doing in terms of the event side of things. And look, man, the point here is that we should all be looking at is how well has Saudi been producing these shows compared to the U.S. market. And I think overall, one of the main tickets to success from the American eyes is how many pay-per-views you have versus Saudi has a whole different agenda. Saudi is not interested in how many pay-per-view buys the show does. Saudi isn't interested to see how much the gate does, which is one of the reasons why they never announced what the gate attendance was or how much money they made at the gates, because their ultimate goal is so far from what American boxing enthusiasts consider success that it's gone over everybody's heads. And I want to remind everybody today, what is their ultimate goal? The ultimate goal has always been to take apart the US market bit by brick, and eventually start building the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia up using and demonetizing US assets. They recently spent over $400 billion into American investments. Where do you think those investments are going? They're obviously going into US properties. They're going into areas of media, technology, movies, films, video content, marketing, sports, agriculture, tourism, obviously. So all these different areas of industries which Saudi is focusing on is coming by way of US because they understand that the US market is currently on its downfall. They're taking as much advantage as they can to take over their most prized possessions because they understand that there's a market for it. I explained this last time. Sports, particularly boxing, makes up a grain of salt on the grander scheme of things, and that still stands true today. Boxing as a whole is nothing compared to what they've been doing on a much bigger scale when it comes to all those areas of categories I've just listed. And look, man, the proof is in the pudding. We just saw recently Saudi taking huge interest into movies and cinemas. Zack Snyder's been in town. Tom Brady's been in town. The Shaquille O'Neal has been in town. So if you just pay a little bit attention as to how they're moving and the way that they're moving, you'll be able to quickly realize that there's a much more deeper picture than this. And we're not going to get too much into geopolitical politics today, just simply because of the time. But there are some deep-rooted history between Saudi Arabia, America, and the Israel-Hamas war, which all this kind of ties together in the end. Maybe we could do another podcast another time for that. But let's just stick to sports today.
No, I think these are points that you sort of made last year as well, and they're standing true even more now. 9 months on, there's been a lot more developments, like you said. I think the one thing that sort of stuck with me in the last conversation we had was you said Turkey's going to be doing a show in LA in August, and you'd be interested to see how he reacts to LA afterwards. And the
Yeah.
funny thing was that he put out a long essay on Twitter criticizing
Yeah.
everything about LA and America, which exactly as you predicted, as many things you have predicted before have come true as well. So
Yeah.
I have to give you credit for that. And what were your thoughts when you saw him put that out there and he just blatantly just attacked the theaters, the cleanliness of the country and everything? What were your thoughts on his sort of outlook on America and how that sort of ties in with everything as well?
I immediately just tagged you in the post. I said, "Look, didn't we
Mm,
talk about this?" It's because me and you, particularly us, we understand how the Saudi culture is. You know, we performed
mm,
Umrah, we performed Hajj. We understand how Saudi takes cleanliness very seriously. We also understand how Saudis do business. They're very clean cut type of culture, right? Even when it comes to business and who they do business with. So I called it. I said, "Look, Saudi's going to do a show in LA. He's going to find out how disgusting it is, and he's going to realize this is not the place for boxing. This is not the place that Riyadh season wants to advertise because our target audience is in LA, right? Our target audience are the heavy hitters from New York, from Atlantic City, from Italy, from Spain, from Turkey, from Azerbaijan, from Russia, from Australia, from Chicago. So they're going to go to all these different really cool places, intricate places to kind of advertise their Riyadh season. But LA was always one of those cities where I always knew from ground one that he'll never want to go back ever again, regardless of how much people think it is. And now there is a case for Las Vegas to be made. I think Las Vegas they'll still have a show there for sure because they have to do at least one. But even after that, he's going to call it a hollow city. I'll guarantee you he'll write a whole report about how Las Vegas isn't what it seems to be. It's
yeah.
dead. People are not really enjoying themselves. It's depressing. The casinos are not lit that they used to be like in the 80s and 90s and 70s. And then he's going to make slowly. They're already building the Las Vegas of Saudi Arabia as we speak. As much as it is as much as it is a controversial issue for the locals in Saudi, Saudi's already been looking at areas in the country on land, on foreign land, where they can consider hosting future events that promotes the bigotry of gambling and strip clubs and casinos and all that's going to start happening through Saudi because they understand that the U.S. market is a perverted nation, and they want nothing more than to just see a bunch of girls dancing and drinking their booze in these stadiums, and they're very well aware of this. So they're very well aware that the buzz is missing. But consider the shows right now that they've been producing as just case studies. They just want to see how the production looks. They want to see what happens when you bring two guys together into one ring. What does the engagement look like on Twitter? What does the engagement look like online? How many views are they doing? Because at the end of the day, we are headed into a digital only world. So they're building platforms for the future of digital VR consumers, right? They understand that the gates of prices are going to go lower. They understand that the economy is in a downfall. Nobody's gonna have money to go to events anymore. They understand all of this stuff. They also understand what kind of position America is in, and where they're headed with their technology and how VR is becoming more and more popular. So for them, it's like, yo, we know exactly where a product is going to end up in the next 5 to 10 years. So for now, let's invest all our money into a very valuable looking product, making sure that the fights get made that the fans are asking for. So at least the fans are on our side. So no matter what product we sell in the future, they will consume it, and that's part of their target goal as well.
How long do you think this has been part of the plan for Saudi in terms of the entertainment sector and sport in particular? Like you said, they've obviously made a big play in golf, live golf, football. Massive Cristiano Ronaldo, Neymar, Benzema, all these big players coming in over the last 2, 3, 4 years. But how long do you think this has been the goal? Was it all because of Vision 2030, or do you think it's been something that's even been in their mind prior to that as well?
Look, Saudi Arabia's population right now is 33 some odd million citizens. Over 60% of those 30 million people are 30 years old. So they've been thinking about this for like over a decade ago. They know exactly what their future work is going to look like. They understand what areas and what sectors need to be fulfilled. They understand that sports, tourism is a huge product to be filled, and a lot of positions are there. So they've been thinking about this for over a decade now. And you can look back at reports as early as 2014 where 2030 was already being talked about in America, and they knew exactly what they wanted to do. This was a long-term play for them, and they knew exactly what, when, and where they needed to step foot into what area. They're just moving extra fast now because of the proxy wars that are going on. Because U.S. is a lot distracted right now. Nobody's really paying attention to the investment dollars or where they're coming from in the U.S. right now. They understand Donald Trump's in play. He does look at stuff like this. Elon Musk does look at stuff like this. So they're moving as quick as they can. They want to get in. They want to get their investment dollars in. They want to make the partnerships. They want to become majority shareholders in these companies I'm talking about in America, so that they have key power and say in terms of how that product moves in the future. So when you say how long do you think that they've been doing this for, bro? It's been over a decade at least by now. We're in 2020, we're in 2025. I remember 2014 hearing about 2030. So what is the ultimate goal for 2030? Look, they're just trying to boost their economy. The oil's running out. They understand that they have a very young demographic, very young citizen base in Saudi Arabia. They need to start working. They need to become labor workers. They need to start working extensively for the country. And remember, it's always Saudi Arabia first. So once these U.S. companies are bought, the majority shareholders are going to be Arabs. Who do you think is going to be managing these companies? It's going to be local Saudi people, right? So that is the
Yeah.
goal, that they're going to start monopolizing the most popular companies in the world, which happen to be U.S. based products.
Amazing. Thank you for that. Let's talk a bit about what you mentioned there about the targeting certain maybe cities like New York, for example. Obviously, we've got a card coming up in New York on May the 2nd. And then the following day, they've got Canelo fighting in Riyadh, which is another massive deal. They managed to get over the line, a 4-fight deal with the biggest face in the sport. Focusing on the New York card, we've got massive stars, American stars such as Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia. I want to sort of touch on something that you have extensively spoken about and how important this will be for athletes. Obviously, the name, image, and likeness aspect. When you've got someone like Devin Haney with 2.6 million followers, Garcia's got however many million followers. Teofimo hasn't got a million, but he's got 850 to 900k, which he's building as well. How important is it for having those three young, up and coming, champions and big names on social media on a card in Times Square, which is going to be for the spectacle more than the actual logistical, sensibility of it. Otherwise, you do Madison Square Garden, but they're looking to have 300 people there and do something that has never been done before. How important is it to sort of target these three fighters in particular and use them as sort of show ponies, essentially, and people who have such a big social media following? How does that tie in with what they're trying to do as well?
Yeah, no, that's a very good observation. I think the Times Square Garden event is going to be one of the most amazing spectacles to witness, because number one, it's free, and number two, you have four of the top youngest boxers in the industry coming up for showcase fights, essentially, and it's just a way to promote not only the sport but to support the idea of Riyadh being worldwide. They have a footprint and things that haven't been done before. I'm hearing talks about them doing an Alcatraz prison next. So they're going to be looking at very unique, and this is something that you and I spoke about last time, that they're going to start looking at very cool places around the world. I wouldn't be surprised if they host a fight at the Egyptian pyramids next, right? There are going to be very cool hotspots in the world where Saudi will make a footprint in. But going back to something earlier, what you said that you mentioned is very important to understand, is the name, image, and likeness sector. It's turning into a $2 billion industry. When I first spoke about name, image, and likeness in 2020, it was just under $1 billion. Now we're double that in less than 5 years. So think about the amount of sponsorship, marketing, and brand dollars are available for fighters. And this is what I started essentially, right? When I came into boxing, I introduced a company called Break Media Group. Break Media Group was the first ever content house for boxers. We were striking deals with companies like Pizza Hut, Honda. We created content on behalf of boxers that ended up on networks like Showtime and DAZN. So it's like we were able to facilitate extra additional revenue for these fighters just because of the fact that we were leveraging their name, image, and likeness. A term that hasn't even been heard before in boxing up until Break Media came onto the scene, right? And even till now, 5 years later, I still don't hear it being talked about. And it worries me because you have another entity moving in, the TKO. You have Dana White and Turki Al-Sheikh teaming up to present an all-new boxing league. And what concerns me the most is the fact that you have a league that's ran by Dana White, who very much is in his footprint about how he wants to dictate his companies, right? So like his UFC company, you're not allowed to have sponsorships. You're not allowed to come into the ring with patches on your shorts. You're not allowed to have any type of promotion in post or pre-fight interviews. So like you can't really drink your own like V8 supplement drink that's given to you by a friend of yours or a client of yours. They won't allow that unless it's Prime or Monster. You can't drink anything else. Like there's very strict rules when it comes to UFC. So I'm worried that that's going to heavily impact the modern fighter, because now you got fighters coming up who are brought up on social media, who are following the likes of Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia, the super social media superstar boxers of the world. They've already started the trend. Like this is how it works. You got deals with Kevin Klein and Ryan Garcia. You got deals with vodka companies and all this stuff. How is that going to work moving forward with a league that doesn't allow it or it's restrictive? Now, once again, I'm not sure if he is or not going to allow it, but based on his past track record, this is the way that he conducts his business, and that's how he's able to get garnish billions of dollars in sponsorship, because he makes sure that every fighter will be talking about that product at his events. So that is a concern for me, and this is why social media has always been a huge factor in my work and the things that I talk about, the things that I work for every day, is because I understand that there is an additional revenue stream available for boxers, and maybe you and I can get into right now. Uh, the pay structure for this new league. I mean, what do you know so far about how this league's going to be created? Any buzz going on in UK about it?
There's a lot of conversations amongst the boxing community. We've seen some interviews on the date it was actually officially announced from a lot of the big UK channels that are well known. Getting hold of Eddie Hearn and other boxing promoters. The initial reaction has been, very much sincere. Oh, this is amazing for boxing. When deep down people know they probably, they are a bit, shook, shall we say, for lack of a better term, or they are starting to think, okay, what does this mean for us, sort of thing. Of course, someone like Eddie Hearn and Matchroom, who've been around for years, they will carry on doing what they're doing, of course, regardless of involvement with Riyadh season or not. Same with Frank Warren, and they're now going to be with DAZN as of next month as well. So they'll carry on doing what they're doing. But like you said, it'll be very interesting to see, what the pay structure is going to be like, how the setup of the league is going to be, because they haven't put out any information yet. I think you mentioned yourself. Will he allow the boxing league to do things differently the way he does UFC in a very controlled manner? He gets called a dictator, for lack of a better term, online for how he's shaped the UFC with sponsorships and the lack of freedom that fighters have. Will he then allow boxers to have freedom? Because then that could backfire on the UFC. So he's got double the sort of pressure on him, because he has to make sure that whatever precedent is set in the UFC, he has to then cross over to the TKO boxing league and vice versa. He has to.
Absolutely right. Otherwise, and even the money aspect, because the UFC is going to be like, wait a minute, you're paying the same guy who is kind of similar to I am, the same amount of followers or fights and losses or style of fighting or the same number of gates. You're paying him triple as much as me, and we all know boxing has always been a higher ticketed price, a prize fighter. Sorry, but I have a feeling all that's going to start changing, bro. I have a feeling that boxing is finally going to start becoming the neutralized, right? And everybody's going to be on the same level playing field, which is going to be very weird to see, because the reason boxers have been paid so much throughout all these years is because we have thousands of deaths in the sport. UFC, I think, it has one or two. I don't want to, just talk out of my ass here, but I'm pretty sure UFC has close to no deaths on fight night. I'm talking about boxing has
we don't hear about it.
You hear about it every fucking weekend. Some guy in Mongolia just died, right? So it's like we need to better understand that boxers are always going to be the prize fighter, because at the end of the day, their life is on the line more than a UFC fighter's is. And that's traditionally why they get paid more. And of course, the market's there. And of course, the advertisers are there. Of course, we're backed by a very niche and strong fan base. But at the end of the day, when you got a guy like Dana coming in who structures businesses like a business, and takes care of everything from A to Z in terms of how the finances are done, you could run into an issue just like you said, where people from UFC are going to look over at boxing and be like, wait a minute, he's allowed to wear patches on his fucking shorts and I can't. I make $10,000 per night as a UFC fighter. I can make another 10 if I just promote the local hamburger shop, because he's been begging me to do it ever since. Why the fuck is he allowed to do it? And they're going to cause a lot of controversy. So Dana has to make up his mind. Is it going to be a strict policy like the UFC? Or is he going to be more open about it?
I think the question I got for someone like you who knows what you're talking about in this field, Dana White for years has sort of talked down boxing, right, as a business, as a potential money making scheme, whatever you want to call it. He's always talked it down, but he's always talked about Zuffa boxing, and I'm going to enter the sport, and we're going to enter. He hasn't done it until now, and the question is that because of the Saudi bankroll? Because they're going to be putting up a lot of the money.
Simple
as that, isn't it? Really simple as that.
He never had the money. He did have the money before, but the money that he had before was always it's internal U.S. money, right? So they're just like, yo, do we really want to spend all these billions of dollars on boxing? And Dana's probably sitting in the chair at the end. He's like, fuck, if you guys aren't passionate about it as much as I am, fuck it, let's just forget about this whole thing ever happened, right? I think Dana himself is very passionate about it, but his partners at the time, Lorenzo and those guys and his investment bankers, they're probably just didn't really have enough faith in boxing changing, because they knew how the system was corrupt. They needed somebody with a high bankroll and who was equally enthusiastic about the product, and that was Sheikh Al Turki. He was the guy to come in and do this. But there are visions that I have sometimes where I sit back and I say, you know what? Boxing has survived for so long just as itself. So when I look at Turkey and Dana's league sometimes, I'm just like, I think one day we're all going to look back at it and be like, yo, remember that time Turkey and Dana teamed up? I think it might be one of those stories that comes in, they're going to survive for a bit. They're gonna survive for a bit. They're gonna realize that there's fucking contingencies everywhere. They're gonna realize that there's loyalty here, that's a disloyalty there. They're gonna. I mean, picture this, bro. There's this whole thing about the WBC coming in to play now, right? Like, are they gonna use their belts or not? And Marisa Sullivan has went on an advertising fucking spree recently
Yeah,
by telling his fighters to go advertise the WBC belt, which is good. You should, as an owner of the WBC, be like, yo, stand by my fucking product, stand by our
yeah,
fucking organization. And as a fighter, you should, because your favorite fighter wore the WBC. They fought for the
exactly.
WBC. There's like history behind it. So I do see a situation where fighters could finally start unionizing and making it a point against Dana, because there has always been a long time beef, to be like, yo, we ain't fighting for your shitty ass TKO belt. You're either going to get with WBC or we're not fighting at all. Now, there is a case to be made that Turkey says, excuse me, I run this shit here. You will fight for my belt, because otherwise you're never going to get paid for that fucking follow up fight in Riyadh. And now the guy's stuck like, oh, fuck, Mauricio, I can't really keep doing this, for WBC. At the end of the day, I got a family to feed. And eventually people will start turning their backs against Mauricio Solomon and be like, fuck it, bro, we got to make a living anyway. We're going to go fight for that shitty TKO belt, but it feeds our family. But like, there's so much moving parts to this, and even a guy like me can't predict what's going to happen. I can only predict the inevitable outcomes. There's two outcomes. It's either going to flop or be an incredible success. How that plays in depends on all the sanctioning bodies coming together, all the fighters unionizing, or is everybody just going to placate to what Turkey has to say because he is the guy with the money right now, and all this turns into one bad fever dream 5 years from
Mm.
now.
I think, you know what, purely just me and you speculating man to man, I think boxing being the wild, wild west it has been since its conception, the mafia, XYZ, and for years and years, all sorts of other interests coming in and out of boxing. The World Boxing Super Series came and went. Big investors who invested in the Champions League in football, so the big wigs, big serious money came and went. Every few years, you see a big spike. Someone will come into boxing and invest, whatever their reasoning is, and that's always different reasons, right? Right now, Saudi are pushing for 2030, and now they've got the World Cup, so they may even push into 2034 with boxing. But at some point, that interest is going to wane and it's going to fall off, regardless of the investment that's been made into this new league now.
But I think all the hoping for is to have majority share in the sport. So you're right. The interest might get out. This is very important for viewers to understand, because you just made a very good point. 2034, FIFA's coming to town. Watch how quickly Turkey forgets about boxing. By the way, that year, you can forget about boxing that year. He's not giving a fuck about it. He's going to make sure Dana runs like a little show here and there, but the focus will be on FIFA, which shows you how fucking culturally aware these fucking people are from Saudi. They understand where the attention is at all times. So the thing to understand about this point is the fact that the entrance will eventually fade away, right? Because the marketing dollars will be already spent. They're already majority shareholder in the companies. Now it's just an automatic pilot, which is why a guy like Dana is good, because he knows that Dana is like a machine. He'll keep those shows running, but the majority shareholder would be Saudi, right? Dana's just an employee for Turkey. He even said in a recent interview at the UFC last night, he used the word, he hired me to manage the business.
To manage it. Yeah.
He already fucking knows his place in the sport. He already knows he's just a bitch to Turkey, right? So like at the end of the day, you got a very dedicated employee in Dana White running your boxing shows. You got the lead investor in Saudi by way of Turkey, who's the mouthpiece. And then copy and paste this recipe in every single fucking industry I just listed. That's the goal. So you're right, the interest will eventually dilute, but by then they already made you a shareholder anyway. So any fight that happens in Saudi, they're already collecting the check for it anyway. And there's going to come a time where Turkey shows up here and there for the fights, right? So to better understand what I'm trying, look, here's what I want to end with. I want U.S. citizens to completely understand that I am fucking America. I am pro-America first. I am pro-American athletes first. I am pro-American fan bases first. I am pro-American products first, because I'm born and raised here. This is my home. This is where I come from. There's a lot of people actually tweet me or message me and like, yo, Jay, would you be the type to sell your soul to the, to Turkey? And I stood by it. I'll say it again. I'll say no, because my expertise lies here. My formula works here. My product works here, and I built my entire track record here. I worked with the likes of LaMelo Ball, the Russell Westbrooks, the Chris Paul, the Joe Bidens, the Barack Obamas, the Chris Pauls, the Damian Lillards of the world, right? So I work with superstar athletes for a day-to-day living. So for me, it's so important to understand that the U.S. market has hold. They do have weight. Yes, boxing made a huge mistake because they should have aligned themselves with investors who are already culturally embedded with them. But you know, it had to be somebody from the outside to come in at the right time, and that had to happen to be Turkey. The cultural, the ideologies, the morals, the ethics are completely night and day, which US doesn't seem to understand yet. They still don't fucking get how much this is going to impact their culture moving forward. But that's going to be another painful conversation that you and I are going to have maybe next year when they start realizing how much they're getting their fucking ass kicked. And what they could have done to prevent it was align themselves with investors who were culturally mutually beneficial to the country.
It's a heavy topic because, like you said, there's so much that goes into it from many different angles. Of course, we are bottom line, we are sports fans. That's fine, but there's so much that goes into it, and power play, like you said, from many different angles, countries, and all sorts. So it's a very interesting topic. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap up?
No, man. Just look, as a boxing fan. This is the famous line from the last podcast was, "As a boxing fan, I'm excited. As a patriot, not excited." But I feel like all the fights will be getting made. I did see a recent announcement for Benavidez versus Bivol, which is really cool to see. And there's PBC and Matchroom are spearheading after that. Once again, I laughed when I saw that because people were tweeting things like, "Oh, PBC's finally back in the picture." Like they can still make these fights happen. But it's like, yeah, but what do you think happens when Turkey calls Benavidez? Be like, "Yo, bro, you're not fighting in fucking shitty ass Vegas. You're fighting in Saudi." And I don't make the fight with Bivol because Turkey knows Bivol personally. They've been boys for so long. Bivol's made the most money he's ever made in his life with Turkey. So there's
The
nothing
last year and a half,
possible. There's nothing possible that PBC or fucking Matchroom can offer Bivol, and that's going to make him say no to Turkey. So Turkey's laughing at all these announcements. He knows if the fans want Bivol versus Benavidez, he'll take it. He'll snatch it. There's no such thing as loyalty in the sport anymore. Just remember that. Every fighter will turn his cheek as long as the money's right. And that goes for guys like Canelo, who recently signed with Turkey. Canelo was seen 6 months ago making fun of Turkey, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And now he's calling him what? What does he call Turkey now?
His Excellency.
No, he calls him Uncle Turkey. Yeah, at the press conference, he called him Uncle Turkey. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's like, fuck you, dude. Like you literally like just busted his balls 2 months ago. Same with Monsieur Solomon. You were kicking his ass last week. Now you're kissing his ass this week. So it's like everybody's gonna kiss the hand that feeds them at the end of the day, and that's the sad part to this, right? But as a fan, we shouldn't complain. We're getting the fights we want. We're finally getting able to see our favorite fighters fight each other. How does it work out? Bivol and Beterbiev has been awesome to see. I can't wait for a third match either because we're finally getting to see two guys go at it. So, yeah, man, boxing is in a very good place. It's never been broken. It's never going to be broken. It's always going to be the wild, wild west. There's always going to be investors coming in and going. Grand opening, grand closing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the best way to finish is Larry Merchant said many years ago, nothing can kill boxing and nothing can save it, but it's always going to be around boxing. So we just have to enjoy it in whatever form it is. I just want to thank you so much for giving me a bit of time today. And I think, again, a few months from now, we'll be speaking again about the next development. Definitely.
Yes, sir. For sure. Thanks a
you,
lot,
bro.
buddy.